Hey guys, Quicksilver Gaming here, and today we're starting a new game and a new campaign. This is Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, and they just released a major update to the beta branch. It's update 1.4, or as they call it, update 6, and it brings 57 plus new hulls to the game, which is something I've felt that the game has needed for a while. There's a lot of gaps in different nations' hull design. And as you can see, this is a absolute giant patch. And there's new guns, new optimization, which is needed badly for the game, and other various balances which should help improve the game overall. So I'm fairly excited. I've played this game a bunch. I really enjoy it. It has its flaws, completely understand that, but it's fun to me. I really do enjoy it. So to test this out, I'm going to go with some tried and true Italians, and I just want this to be a little bit smaller of a campaign, so we're going to start in 1930, so just before things kick off for World War II, we should have more modernized ships. Our territories should be more in place. Just going to do hard difficulty. Since this is in beta, not sure everything is balanced right now, and legendary difficulty in this game doesn't make the combat more difficult. It sort of makes the enemy zombie-like in that you destroy an entire fleet and suddenly another fleet randomly appears. So hard I actually feel like is a good difficulty for this. AI opponent historical, I sort of always recommend this. Always create your own fleet unless you're up for a ridiculously hard challenge. And then I don't have any shared designs, and it's the beta patch, so I'm just going to turn this off. And let's start the campaign. So to start off the campaign, we designed a couple ships, and I tried to create some semi-historical ships that you would probably have seen in the 1930s. So one of those is the Conte de Cavour class battleship. And this one was pretty difficult to build because the ship's not long enough, and it's way overweight. This battleship was only about 29,000 tons. The minimum you can build is 59,000. But we did a decent job. We have 2 triple turrets and 2 double turrets. They are 13 inchers as opposed to 12.6-inch guns. I just made that executive decision. And then we have a couple 5-inch guns here. There would be more 5 inches. I think they're actually like 4.6 or something like that. But there'd also be a million more regular 4 inches. I tried to copy this as best as I could. It has 2 funnels and the bridge and the secondary bridge. Pretty close. I feel like the flags are much better in this update. It does have a 4-way offset, but in the new game, or I should say the newer update, the 4-way offset doesn't seem to be as bad in terms of how big of a detriment the offset is, which is pretty nice. I think it's only, yeah, so here's the negative effects for the 4-way offset. I mean, obviously you want to get to 0, but it was just impossible with this ship. Very interesting design by the Italians, especially when you look at the World War I version of this ship compared to the World War II version. They might as well just build a brand new ship because it looks nothing like the original Dreadnought style ship it was. So I built 3 of these. Only 2 of these were ever built, but there's the Andrea Doria battleship that they modernized for World War II, and there were 2 of them, and they're almost identical to this ship, so I figure you could build about 4 of these, and that would be about right. There was actually a 3rd Conte de Cavour class battleship, but it was sunk in World War I believe. I think it was called the Leonardo da Vinci. So we have this battleship, insane cost. That's part of the new update, that battleships should cost a lot, and it makes sense. This thing is worth 5 cruisers in terms of the cost, and I think that's appropriate because you used to have battleships that would, or I should say, you used to have cruisers and light cruisers that would be half the cost or close in on the cost of a battleship, and that's just wrong. So the next ship I built is, I tried to match the Zara class cruiser to the best of my abilities. It's close, but it's not perfect, and even though the patch said they would fix this where the boats render, obviously you can see there's an error here with the rendering in the shipbuilding, as we have a boat on top of the torpedo tubes. So one of the big difference is this ship should have two two-tube torpedo launchers on each side of the ship, so a total of 8 tubes. I have a total of 8 tubes, but due to placement, I had to make 2 4-tube launchers, and that's just saying the game 2 launchers of 2 tubes is better than 1 launcher of 4 tubes, at least in terms of reload speed. This takes a longer time to reload than smaller amounts of tubes, so just keep that in mind. I did do it historically accurate in terms of the size of the torpedoes. The Italians like their 21-inch torpedoes. I don't know if they had oxygen propulsion, but it's still a game. I'm not going to go absolutely crazy on historical accuracy. The Zara class also only had 8-inch guns. I went for 9-inch guns, one because they're Mark V, which is better than the Mark IV that I had unlocked for the 8-inch, and this ship, in order to fit everything on it, I had to make it 15,000 tons, and the Zara class, I believe, was around 13,000 tons, but if I made it any shorter than 15,000, none of this would fit. So I would really like them to make the ships longer. Not necessarily larger in tonnage, but just longer. It's really hard to fit everything you need. I mean, in fact, this ship needs to be even longer so I can fit the torpedo tubes in. They need a rear mast with a barbette so I can fit these torpedo tubes underneath this. I could put a barbette here, but it kind of looks silly, to be honest. Just little changes like that would make it even better. I mean, I really appreciate that they're, adding even more this far into the game. They're really nice. So, but anyways, that's the Zara class. Only 4 of these were ever built. I'm essentially saying this is like the Trento class and the... I'm trying to think I can't remember what the other classes of Italian cruisers are. But there's a bunch of... I think it's like the Condottieri, but that may be a light cruiser. And I didn't build any light cruisers yet, just because we kept things simple and it took me a really long time to build these ships. And this nightmare of a destroyer, this is another example of I would love them to make the ships longer. This is about as accurate as you can get for the Navigatori class destroyer. It had, and I made the guns pretty accurate. They're 4.7-inch guns in dual turrets, and it has 3 of them. It has 1 up front, 1 in the middle on a barbette, and 1 on the back on a barbette. And then it has its tower. It has a front, whatever you call these things, front funnel. And then it has another funnel in the middle. I wonder if I could have rotated that funnel. Looks a little bit funny. Oh well, too late now. And then the ship had 2 launchers of 3 tubes each of the 21-inch torpedoes, so I tried to design it that way. So this is about as historically accurate as you can get. It's very pitchy, very rolly, and destroyers in this game generally are pretty terrible, and 76 million The cruiser was 302 million, and the battleship was like 1.546 billion. So pretty hefty price. I'll show you what we did for the fleet, as the loading time between screens takes forever. I'll cut this out. So as far as what we did for the fleet, we built, let's see, class. We built 3 of the Conte de Cavour class battleships. We have 8 of those Zara class cruisers. On just, only 4 were built, but whatever, they're treated as the other cruisers. And then a bunch of the Navigatori class destroyers. Only 12 of these were built historically. I think I built about 16 or 18 here. So we're not going to stick to exact historics, but that's what we did. As far as finances, at the very beginning, I generally push tons and tons into this, into tech budget. You want to max out transport capacity and you want to max out crew training. This should theoretically go down, because one trick you want to do at the very beginning is take your really expensive ships and put them on limited. And what this does is it stops your force from costing a ton of money. So I'm going to go do this, and I will cut right back and show you what that does. Alright, so I have changed the status from a lot of ships from in being to limited. Notably the ships that I want to sort of be my task forces. They're set as limited, and then my other forces that I want to be convoy, an interception force for convoys or convoy protectors. They're all set to in being. In wartime, they would be sea control, and in wartime, my others would be on defend. Mainly because I don't want those task forces going out and doing things by themselves. I want them to remain a task force. But as you see, I think our monthly balance before was about negative 140 million, and now it's at a plus 27 million, which is pretty huge. I also went ahead and started building the max shipyard size that I could, because I can't build my biggest battleship yet because of this. So I always recommend maxing your shipyard size every time it is available. And then, as I said, we're 100% tech budget, 100% crew training, 100% transport capacity. You want this to get up to 200. As we balance our budget, you can move your tech budget up and down, but I wouldn't really change these two right here. And let me show you what I did over here for the fleets. So in terms of the ports, I have 2 battleship fleets. One at Gaeta, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, which is just a battleship, 2 cruisers, and a couple designated, or couple destroyers, and those are all set to limited. Everything else is set to in being, except for my fleet at Taranto, which is my big fleet, which is 2 battleships, a couple cruisers, and a couple destroyers. And what we're hoping is that nobody realizes that you could put torpedoes on ferry Swordfish and torpedo our ships while they're at harbor at Taranto. But we're not at war with the English yet, so Taranto is my major fleet, and as you can see here, here's all the ships. And Gaeta is my secondary fleet. Rhodes, I have sort of an interdiction force, and then at Cagliari I have an interdiction force, and then I just have some destroyers about, and they're just prowling the seas nearby, and I also own Mogadishu. So that is what we look like after turn 1. At the start of my next turn, I've been given some options. Now, there's a lot of discourse on what's the best thing to do here, but I can't remember who it was on Reddit actually broke down the correct math here. And while you would think naval budget percentage is the correct thing to do, because as your naval budget percentage goes up, what you would think is that you want to increase your GDP, because the larger your GDP, technically, the more money your Navy has. However, your GDP increases at such an insignificant rate that naval budget always wins in the long run. And it's very counterintuitive. But as I said, I'll try to find the link. There's a guy on Reddit who broke down the math, and he played out an entire campaign both ways. And the gains from naval budget percentage are insane, as opposed to increasing your GDP. So on this one, we could decrease our naval budget to add prestige and unrest. That's an absolute no-no. I would never decrease your naval budget percentage. Your naval budget percentage is how you, as a player, earn your money, because you don't actually control your nation. You're just the admiral in charge of your nation's navy. You don't actually get to control your nation. +3 naval prestige and -3 unrest is pretty good, especially because of Italy right now. I have 25 unrest and -1 naval prestige, but I don't really care. Really, I just want that naval budget percentage. Basically, every time that comes up, I will do that. If the government changes hands right now, it's not a big deal to me. So once again, huge one here, +1.5% naval budget percentage, and we get prestige and minus to unrest. That one seems pretty awesome. We piss off Germany a little, but, you know, they piss everybody off, so who cares? And we're going to do that. So then you'll receive a bunch of messages on turn 1 about all these new sea passages that are unlocked, and it really doesn't apply to the Italians. You'll have a bunch of these little things about certain nations have created trade. The Empire of Japan tried to anger us, and we just didn't care. And then the people of Indonesia are creating an uprising. So that is the start of a new turn. Now, what we can look here is go into our politics and see what might be coming in the future. And England and France are the most unkind to us, but otherwise we're very peaceful to everybody else. I don't mind war, but it's not something you want to push into immediately, because right now we have a pretty awesome growth for our GDP, and we want that to grow. But when you're in war, after a while, this drastically changes and can even go into the negative. So we'll think about that very, very carefully. And as you see, our growth is pretty insane compared to some of these other countries, except maybe Germany, of course. They're preparing for war. It's 1930 after all. New group in power. The United States, they're starting to boom, as they always do. And then England has the largest GDP, or sorry, France has the second largest GDP, and England has the largest GDP, as they should pre-World War II. As you can see, England has a rather large fleet, 2 battleships, Battlecruiser, 15 cruisers, a bunch of light cruisers. So we will probably sit peacefully for a while, and I'll probably just roll through a bunch of turns. I'll show you this turn. As far as research, you have 3 free priorities that you can do. The thing to note is every priority you put out decreases the amount of time of others. So if you look, I have destroyer design in 3 months. I'll be unlocking 7,500 ton destroyers, and a new hull will be available called the hybrid destroyer, which that actually seems pretty good. Now, if I put a priority over here, you see that 3 months goes to 4 months, and I'm assuming big guns, yeah, big guns went to 5 to 8 months. If I put another one we're now at 5 months here. If I put another one, we're now at 6 months. So just keep that in mind when you are prioritizing things, that there are major effects here. Now, things like hull construction are really good because that decreases the amount of defects that can happen when building ships. Because I'll show you in a moment, some of my ships have defects and it makes them worse. We already have radar, so rangefinder doesn't seem as important right now. And torpedo size I don't care about. Shells I don't necessarily care about. I'm kind of okay where we are, to be honest. Maybe cruiser design, but we already have a lot. So I'm not going to prioritize anything at the moment. If I was starting in like 1890, 1900, 1910, it's all about hull strengthening, which is your dreadnoughts, battleships, your cruiser designs, maybe your destroyer designs, boilers, engines, armor quality, hull construction, and definitely big guns, small guns, things like that. There's a lot to prioritize, but since we're starting in 1930, not as important. Another thing I meant to show you is there's this button down here called Add Crew. Always click it. What this does is if any of your ships are short on crew, it adds crew to them, and you will lose crew as the game moves on. With that being said, I'm just going to power through a bunch of turns until something exciting is happening, so I'll see you in a bit. Alright, so it's May 1930, we have unlocked the hybrid destroyer and multi-hull for submarines. I'm not a big fan of subs, I think they're kind of a waste, but better depth charges. I do prepare myself to be ready for subs though, so I do put depth charges on basically everything that can have depth charges. Otherwise, nothing exciting has happened. I don't think we're quite ready for the hybrid class destroyer. I think we need a couple different towers, maybe funnels to make it work. But this is what I came up with for essentially the Condottieri light cruiser. We are using the experimental light cruiser hull, and this is one of the new hulls that they've released in this beta patch, and it's hilarious. And it fits the Condottieri class light cruiser perfectly. There is no armor on this ship, and we have completely maxed out the belt and the main deck, and it has 2 inches of armor, which is historically accurate. I don't know about the 2 inches, but these light cruisers were incredibly under armored. Usually you think about that in terms of guns. Under-armored. So yeah, under-armored. I also had to add a second funnel. 2 funnels just wasn't quite doing it, and I didn't want to push to forced, as it creates too much smoke. And I want this thing to be accurate. The goal of this is to destroy other destroyers. It's not taking on a cruiser. It'll be blown out of the water if it comes across another cruiser because it has no armor. But this thing should be able to take on destroyers fairly well. I mean, the destroyers might punch holes through it too, but it has 6-inch guns. It has multiple of them. The accuracy on them is dreadful. Just realized that. Can we make this accuracy better by increasing the length? It doesn't do much. 3.66 rounds per minute is the rate of fire. If I drop it back to 0, we go to 5.36 rounds per minute. Can we take this to about 5 rounds? I would like these to be very rapid firing weapons. 4.82. 4.9. I'm fine with that. So 4.9 rounds per minute we're going with. Accuracy isn't fantastic. We do have a bunch of little 2-inch guns that will also blast through convoys. The Condottieri had 2 launchers of 2 tubes, so I've added those on there to try to be somewhat historically accurate. This part here is not historically accurate. This would be 2 planes, or 2 reconnaissance planes, I believe. But, of course, we don't have that in the game, and it would look stupid if there was nothing there, so I just created 2 of these little super firing barbettes because they fit side by side, and just put another bunch of little 2-inch guns. I'd love to make this lighter, but it shrinks the size, and I said this before, I wish they made the ships longer in this game with a lower tonnage included in the length, because real ships were long. They were lengthy, and they had to fit tons onto the ship, and this is fairly accurate. The second funnel isn't, but all of these bridge works, it's fairly accurate. So this is what we've created. We're saving the design. It is as much as our Zara class, but it's fast. 36.5 should chase down a lot, although the Zara class is 34. This thing's probably terrible, and now it thinks that some parts are badly placed, which is stupid because they're not. Alright, we're going to ignore that badly placed because it's letting us build the ships. We don't have a lot of money, so we're probably only building 3. Oops. Oh. It's not. It's doing it per month. Is that new? I swear you just paid like a one-time chunk. So let's build 6 of these terrible ships and see what that did. Okay, so our monthly balance went into the negative. So what are naval funds used for? That's interesting. They changed that. You used to just pay for the ships up front. So let's do something like this. 90% tech budget. Perfectly acceptable. We have 3 of these really, really bad ships being built. And I'd actually like one of them to be placed down there. So maybe we can move this ship to Mogadishu. And then hopefully that allows us to place one of those in Misau. Misau, perfect. If you didn't move that ship, there wouldn't be enough space for the ship to go there. So I probably would like 2 in Rhodes and the other in Cagliari. Yeah, let's put all 3 in Cagliari. And the idea behind these ships is to take out convoys. Probably won't happen. I would love for this game to designate ships as more as, like, these ships defend convoys, these ships attack convoys, these ships interdict other task forces, but they haven't created that yet. I would love that to be a feature in the future. Anyways, I think that's it for this turn, so I will go ahead and power through a bunch of turns and come back when something exciting happens. So we didn't make it very far before something interesting happened. The Minister of Foreign Affairs believes that the fleet needs more cruisers. He would support the raising of adequate funds for the construction of cruisers. if I agree with the minister's opinion, we gain some unrest, but we gain nearly 1.5 billion funds, and I think that's a fantastic idea. So we will take those funds. Cool, 11-inch Mark V guns. So this is the in-between stuff in your technology, advanced naval shells. Indonesia has defeated the remnants of Netherlands forces and has gained full control of Sulawesi. Probably pronounced that wrong too. So, as far as what that does for our finances, we now have tons of money. And as I'm unsure what naval funds are actually used for now, since building a ship seems to be more of a monthly purchase as opposed to a one-time purchase, I think we can dip into these naval funds quite heavily. So I'm going to build another battleship. And it's going to take a long time. 26 months. So let's put it with our other battleship. And then that being said, since the foreign minister wants us to build more cruisers, let's build let's build 4 more heavy cruisers. And what does this do? So that puts us at negative 175,000 for quite some time. But I think we can eat that for a little bit. Let's put these in this port. And that brings sort of grabs another battleship group for us. And if we go to ports, so what did we have in this fleet? 4 DDs, 4 cruisers. So down here, it'll be 2 more cruisers, 2 more cruisers is 4, and then we have 2 DDs. So let's also build 2 more destroyers. And let's put all of them, not all of them, let's put those 2 destroyers here. And then as far as our regular cruisers, we could put 2 into Brook, and that would be sort of a task force. I'm a little bit afraid of France, so I could put 2 in Albania. Maybe I'll put those 2 cruisers in Albania. And then we'll just prepare for a war versus France. France is probably very powerful. Politics page is pretty glitchy because our navy is not very good yet. Although compared to everybody else, it's not terrible. But if we look at the British Empire, actually, I mean, they have lots of cruisers, lots of light cruisers, destroyers, bunch of subs. But France, 2 battleships, battle cruiser, bunch of cruisers, bunch of light cruisers. Okay. I feel like France is sort of the one we need to worry about the most. Navy power rating. This is based on what you have your ship set to, and since I have a bunch of unlimited, my power rating is pretty low. But let's power through a few more turns after we look at research. Also, destroyer design is done. That's interesting. That's because we started in 1930, so we're pretty far along on the research tree. Let's just, let's just call that a turn. We've started pushing forward. I will probably mess around with the tech budget as it goes, but I just want to see how we do here for a little while. No, we probably need to cut that down. Let's go to 75. 5%, and that's less of our budget that's being chewed every turn. That's just sort of balancing your budget. All right, I will pause the video here, and I'll be back after we churn through some more turns. So I have powered through a couple turns. Nothing interesting really has happened. I've made a couple allies, currently building some battleships for them. And I've been angering the English more and more, so maybe war might happen soon, but it looks like we're about to invade Ethiopia, so that should be interesting. Let's see if... Yep, sure enough, we are invading Ethiopia. We have 39,000 troops, they have 114,000. We'll see if that actually works. Maybe it will. As far as our allies, figured I'd show this off. We signed an agreement with Portugal and Belgium, and I believe I'm making 2 battleships for Portugal. And they gave me a pretty sum of money for it. We're 3 months away from all of our absolutely terrible light cruisers, and not much else has really happened. As you see, England's getting a little bit more angry, so is the United States. France is kind of France. As far as our growth, it's steady, and as far as our finances, we're sort of sticking around this 2.4 billion mark, even though our monthly balance is negative 125. Just we've received money via trades and different government officials that keep giving me money for random reasons. So just like that, something exciting has happened. Albania's new leader was found to support armed terrorists who disrupt the regional trade networks of Italian Empire, not the Italian Empire, of Italian Empire, increasing the tension between the two countries. Italian's government decided to launch a swift military operation to occupy Albania, replace the local government, and pacify the region for the coming years. Task force of at least 12,049 total tonnage is needed to support the invading force. Do I support this action? I'm going to say yes, because what that does is we can send a force to capture Albania. And it's right here, which is really close, really, well, very, very, very close. So we are going to move ships into this conquest, and we are going to just send an entire fleet. And even though it says only 12,000 tonnage is needed, there's this chance to succeed that you can see right here. The larger sum of tonnage you have, the greater your chance. Basically, if you just send 12,049 tons, your chance to succeed will be minimal and it'll be a waste of time. Capturing Albania would be fantastic because we could put destroyers here. Later I might just build destroyers that really only have mine-laying capabilities, and they'll just sit in port and create minefields. Might be something I do later. But it would create a nice little choke point for mines here once we start doing that. And the more territories you have, theoretically, the more money you earn, even though I haven't really seen a correlation between that. But we start to stage troops in here, and let's say we somehow want to take northern Greece out. That's a bad example because they're a minor ally, but it allows us to push forces into there. If we go to war against the Austro-Hungarians, theoretically they can invade there, although we probably won't have enough forces here, so most likely it'll just be them invading us. But, you know, a little mission, we'll take advantage of it. Just a quick update on our invasion. So we have nearly 175,000 tons invading Albania. I'm assuming this just allows us to bring troop transports, and we'd probably pack troops onto destroyers and cruisers and whatnot too. But we have 100% chance to succeed this operation. So, and that's a number I really like to see. And just like that, the Italian Empire gains control of Albania. So pretty cool there. We gained the port of Durazzo and Avalona. So I'd probably just pack 2 destroyers into these ports. They're nice little area here. Move our big giant fleet back into Taranto and hope that nobody torpedoes us while we are sitting there. Before I forget, earlier I mentioned defects that your ships can have. So here's an example. This destroyer, one of my Navigatory class destroyers, at the very bottom you see flaws, extra hull defects, fire extinguishing minus 1.3%, ship repairs all modules minus 1.4%, ship repairs engines minus 0.1%, armor strength minus 1.7%. So these are the defects I was talking about, and when you go into your ship design and you create a new ship, if it loads up, you have certain things that can increase the amount of defects. So if I went to Electro Hydro 2, or Electro Hydraulic Steering Gear 2, you can see that it has minus 8.5 sustained speed while turning, plus 5% hull weight, plus 170% engine cost. Then the green is plus 11.5 turning rate, plus 18.5 rudder speed shift. And then the bottom, plus 10% ship flaws. Now there's technology or research that you can unlock that decreases the amount of flaws that your ships will have, but then these also increase to it. So the more complex system and more modern system, the more likely you are to have flaws. So sometimes a lot of people just like put the best thing they can on everything, but then they'll find out when the ship is finished, it has a bunch of flaws and it might be like horrifically overweight. Some of the worst flaws are you have like accuracy bonus penalties. And so I try to find a nice balance of a nice upgrade, but not as many flaws. So, for example, I usually go Electro Hydro 1 because there's not a huge difference between Gear 1 and Gear 2, 12.5 and 16, versus so 12.5 is better, right? Weird. 12.5 versus 11.5, but the rudder shift speed is only 16 versus 18. But to me, that difference is not worth an extra 5% in ship flaws. You double your percentage here. So those are just things I keep in mind. Other ones are like the auxiliary engine. Generally, auxiliary 2 is good enough. Auxiliary 3 is nice because you lose some of the engine vibration. If you see here, you have plus 10% engine vibration, the third line. Whereas over here, there's no engine vibration anywhere, but you have a plus 5% chance for ship flaws. So these are just things to go back and forth from. Engine vibration affects your accuracy. So those are, it's just all things to think about when creating a ship. There are downsides to just putting the best of everything on your ship, like Shaft 4, plus 6% ship flaws. So just wanted to point that out before I forgot, because I did mention it earlier on in the campaign. And Ethiopia has been conquered by the Italian Empire, so even though we're outnumbered nearly 3 to 1, we won. We lost 13,000 soldiers, they lost 120,000. Pretty brutal. Alright, we have something interesting. Montenegro is a threat to the Italian Empire. So we are going to send a task force. We'll probably just send our big battleship group to guarantee 100% success. Soviet Union doesn't like us attacking Montenegro, but you know what? Don't really care. You know, everybody cared about Ukraine, but Russia was like, oh well. Oops, did I say that? Anyways, we're going with this attack. As far as building a new ship, I decided that we need to push big guns. I only had Mark III 15-inch guns unlocked for essentially my Littorio class battleship, and really need the Mark IVs. Also, the Mark IIIs are really ugly, and I'm quite shallow, so that was another contributing factor. I might go back and build a cruiser killer, but same issue there. We had Mark IV 11-inch guns, but not Mark IV 12-inch guns, and I'd really like 12-inch guns on a cruiser killer, so that's sort of where we're sitting right here. Our monthly balance just tanked because we just moved a fleet out of port. We're still building 4 battleships, mainly for other nations, so nothing too exciting, so we'll be back in a bit. So despite the concerns of Russia, we have gained control of Montenegro, and I believe we also became allies with Australia? So let's double check that. What's that about? Yep, Australia. So we are allies with Portugal, Belgium, and Australia. War with France is inevitable. Our finances should be fine as soon as I move this fleet back into Taranto and put them all back on limited again. So as far as what we gained out of Montenegro, I think it is Bar, and I think that's it. They keep Kataro? That's kind of odd. I present you the Luigi class Battlecruiser. This is not historical whatsoever, but unlock the next version of the 12-inch turrets. So we have created the ultimate cruiser destroyer killer. So this bad boy has 4 turrets of 2 guns each that are 12-inch turrets, 49 caliber. Then it has another 8 turrets, 2 guns each of 4-inch turrets, 40 caliber. Just made them as long as possible. And then it has a boatload of 2-inch guns. There are 14 turrets, 2 guns per turret of these little 2-inch guns. So the 2-inch guns will absolutely shred destroyers and convoy transports. The 4-inch guns will also shred destroyers. They'll hurt cruisers. And then the 12-inch guns are designed to absolutely blast heavy cruisers out of the water and potentially other battle cruisers. And we made this ship as light as it can be on this hull. This is the large cruiser 2 hull, I believe. And we did a pretty good job with the offset. It's near 0. The pitch and roll are pretty decent, and the engine efficiency is great. So it has it's really fast, 38 knots. I believe this hull says 38.5 on it. I just go with 38. You go up to 39, and I mean this is already an expensive ship, but you move up to 39, the engine efficiency tanks, the range goes down, and the cost goes way up. Maximum bulkheads, spacious quarters, decent propulsion here. I opted not to do the diesel because the diesel actually adds engine vibrations onto the ship, and we weren't having really any engine efficiency issues. The diesel is better for ships that you struggle to hit your peak engine efficiency. And then just standard armament, I went with Barbet 4 because we really didn't have any issues with flash fire. We only have a 4.8% chance, minus 35 and minus 71% for flooding. So just saves a little bit of space. As you see, you know, we're 500 some tons below our maximum. Otherwise, I go with super heavy shells often because they even though it says their accuracy is worse, their accuracy is actually better because they have a longer range, and therefore their range bands are larger. It's a really weird concept, and I don't think the game does it very well. Otherwise, top of the line, I went with the Coincidence Rangefinder 5 instead of the stereoscopic, because this is taking on cruisers, destroyers, light cruisers, and transports, and those things get in close. Whereas on a battleship, I like the stereoscopic because you're shooting super long range and trying to make use of the plunging fire. Also, I went with sonar because this ship will probably be under torpedo attack, which means I also went with a slightly higher version of torpedo protection. I didn't go full-blown on the torpedo protection because it adds a lot of weight and a lot of cost to the ship. Of course, Gen 2 radar, and then just maxed out almost everything here. So its max spell is 13.7. I really like the changes to to the maximums here to make them a little bit more realistic, and it makes the ships a little bit more squishy, because sometimes they feel invincible, but if it's war they want, it's war they'll get. So December 1933, France has sent us an ultimatum, and I'm sorry, but we're not accepting it. So we are now at war with France, and things might escalate into war with England too. I want to push one of my fleets right here, and this is 2 battleship, 4 cruiser, 4 destroyer fleet. And my other fleet I want to move about here, as they have some ports right there. And what I can do is, if things go well, I could start invading Corsica. I think that would be a good place to take. And then if we can obtain Corsica, then we'll just try to move through Africa and see... Oh, Syria's... That would be spicy. But we're probably in a little bit of a rough position, so we just have to hope that our ships are better than theirs. We have 4 battleships, 12 cruisers, 6 light cruisers. We don't have our battle cruisers ready for about another year and a half. They have 2 more battle cruisers than us currently. They have way more cruisers and way more light cruisers. So that's that'll be interesting right there. And what I need to do is turn a lot of these ships into sea control or defend, and I will do that off screen, but war has begun. To give you an idea of where we are, so during wartime the naval funds increased drastically. This unrest, who knows how that'll go. Our naval prestige should theoretically skyrocket as we win more battles. Shipbuilding capacity, we are very full, so if we take a lot of damage, this is a little bit rough, but I believe one of our battleships... Oh, it just finished. We have 3 cruisers done in 4 months for Portugal, and a bunch of stuff done within the year for Portugal, Australia, and Indonesia. We have 2 more light cruisers of our own done in 10 months, another destroyer done in 5 months. But our big stuff is 16 months away. These would absolutely decimate the French, and it really sucks that we don't have them ready yet. But, you know, we'll just make do. Our growth is insane right now, and hopefully it doesn't tank too much during war. A lot of times during war, your growth definitely tanks, so that is something to keep in mind, because when we come out of war, that monthly balance might be really rough. So I've moved these ships up, and I will change a bunch of the statuses of my other ships, and we will see where we land. Otherwise, I think that's it for this episode. Next episode, we will start fighting the enemy, and there'll be a lot of combat. So this episode was a lot of setup. Nearly 4 years of basically setting up for war. That's a lot of the time how it goes in this game, but now things should be hot and sweaty, and this will be tough. The French definitely have a numerical advantage over us, so hope you guys enjoyed this one. A lot of cutting and editing to make this somewhat reasonable. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you on the next one. So as always, guys, until next time. If you enjoyed this content and would like to see more, please like, subscribe, and comment below.